It's 1266, and the most feared warriors on the planet, the Knights Templar, are trapped. They're inside this colossal mega fortress called Safed, cornered like a lion and making a last stand against an absolutely gigantic Mamluk army. For weeks, they've survived every single attack, and even their enemies think they're complete legends. But they weren't defeated by swords. They were taken down by a shocking betrayal from someone on the inside, leading to a massacre that is one of the craziest stories of the Crusades. How did this supposedly unbeatable fortress get conquered? And why were its legendary defenders slaughtered after they surrendered? To get the answers, we have to go back to a land defined by holy war. Before we begin, if you love uncovering hidden, dramatic moments from history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. By the mid-13th century, the Crusader states were about to be literally deleted. The dream of a Christian kingdom was disappearing, and now it was just a desperate fight for survival. The last Crusader cities were like tiny islands in a hostile sea, and a new, terrifying power was rising, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. The Mamluks were an insane new dynasty of former slave soldiers who took over and became the new champions of Islam. Imagine if a company's elite security force, originally bought as assets, suddenly staged a coup and took over the entire corporation. That's the Mamluks. Their sultan was Baybars, a guy who was literally a former slave, sold for cheap because he had a bad eye. But through pure ambition and genius-level command, he became one of the most powerful rulers in the world. He was like a strategic grandmaster playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. After crushing a Mongol army at the legendary Battle of Ain Jalut, Baybars turned to his final challenge, the Crusader kingdoms. He didn't just see the Christians as enemies, he saw them as traitors who worked with the Mongols. His goal was simple and brutal, to systematically destroy every single castle and wipe the Crusaders off the map for good. He wasn't just weeding the garden, he was salting the earth. One by one, fortresses started to fall. It was a non-stop, bloody rampage. Standing in his way was the most powerful military order of the time, the Knights Templar. For over 100 years, the Templars had been the elite super soldiers of the Crusades. Think of them as the 13th century equivalent of the Navy SEALs. Combined with the discipline of monks, they were warrior monks who swore an oath to defend the Holy Land until they died. And in the hills of Galilee, they had a fortress so huge, so well defended, it was thought to be unconquerable. It was the castle of Safed, and it was directly in Baybars' path. Safed wasn't just a castle, it was a giant flex made of stone. Sitting on a mountain almost 3,000 feet high, it dominated everything, giving a perfect view of all the roads into the Kingdom of Jerusalem. It was like a security camera watching the entire country. The Templars got the site in the 1240s and started an upgrade so extreme it was like they took a sturdy old pickup truck and rebuilt it into an armored monster truck. They used their massive fortune to turn an old castle into a true mega fortress. A report from that time said the fortress was almost 10 acres and had a massive double wall. Think of it like a tank wrapped in a second, even bigger tank. There were zero blind spots for an attacker. Inside this stone beast was a self-sufficient war machine. It was less like a castle and more like a doomsday prepper's ultimate bunker. They had workshops churning out crossbows, massive tanks for water, and warehouses stuffed with enough food to survive a siege for years, like a bear hibernating through a long winter. Its garrison was completely stacked. At the time of the siege, there were something like 2,000 defenders packed inside. This included the hardcore Templar knights, sergeants, hired mercenaries, and local Christian soldiers. When Baybars' army showed up in the summer of 1266, the garrison prepared for the biggest fight of their lives. They had their faith, their training, and walls that had never been broken. They were ready to win. In early June 1266, the Mamluk army arrived. It was terrifying. Baybars had a gigantic army and a crazy number of siege engines, huge catapults, so heavy they had to be dragged by hand. The siege started on June 13th. Baybars surrounded the fortress, and the boom of his engines was constant as they smashed huge rocks against Safe's walls. It was like a relentless, round-the-clock thunderstorm made of pure stone. But this fortress was built for this. The thick walls just ate the hits, like a heavyweight champion taking punches on the ropes, barely even flinching, while the defenders fired back with their own engines and a storm of crossbow bolts. But Baybars was smart. He knew a direct attack was basically a death wish, so he switched to classic siege tactics. He ordered his miners to dig tunnels to the base of the outer wall, like termites chewing through the foundations of a house. The plan was to stuff a tunnel with flammable material, light it, and boom, collapse a part of the wall from underneath. For 6 insane weeks, the siege was an absolute grind. The Templars fought like absolute legends, rushing out of the gates to wreck the siege works and even digging their own tunnels. This led to crazy underground battles in the dark, like something out of a claustrophobic horror movie. The garrison held on, stopping every single Mamluk attack. The unbeatable fortress was living up to its name, but Baybars had another weapon, and it was way sneakier than any siege engine. As the siege dragged on, Baybars switched from brute force to mind games. He knew the garrison wasn't all the same. The Templar Knights would fight to the death, but many defenders were local mercenaries who just fought for money. Baybars sent messengers with a crazy deal. Any non-Templar soldier could walk away to the Christian city of Acre if the castle surrendered. But the Templars were not included in the deal. It was a galaxy brain move. It was like throwing a single bone to a pack of starving dogs. Suddenly, they weren't a team anymore. They were rivals. People started arguing. As food ran out and no rescue army was coming, the mercenaries started to give up. Soldiers began deserting, seeing a chance to save themselves. The end of this story has a few different versions, but one talks about a Syrian sergeant working for the Templars named Leo. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, the Templar commander sent Leo to negotiate with Baybars. Baybars, the master of deception, supposedly gave Leo his personal promise: if the entire garrison surrendered, everyone, even the Templars, would be allowed to leave safely. He offered them a golden bridge to freedom. Thinking he had just saved all his friends, Leo went back with the Sultan's promise. Exhausted, starving, and with their outer walls literally crumbling, the last Templar commanders made a huge choice. They trusted the Sultan. On July 23, 1266, the gates of safety were opened. But Baybars lied. As the garrison walked out of the fortress, they were all captured. The local Christians and mercenaries were separated, and the women and children were taken to be sold as slaves. For the Templars, there was zero mercy. Baybars had taken garrisons as slaves before, but this was next-level cruelty. The Templar knights and sergeants who surrendered believing they were safe were marched to a hill nearby. We don't know the exact number, but some sources say hundreds of them, maybe even 2,000, were executed. One by one, they were beheaded. It was a cold, calculated slaughter, a message written in blood and sent to every other Crusader fortress. This wasn't a game with rules anymore. Baybars was flipping the entire chessboard over. The days of honorable surrender were over. He was fighting a war of total annihilation. Losing Safed was a complete catastrophe for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. It wasn't just losing a key fortress. It was losing a huge, experienced garrison that the Crusaders could never replace. The mental damage was just as bad. If the mega fortress of Safed could fall, it was like seeing your strongest superhero get defeated. Suddenly, no one felt safe. The history of the Crusades is filled with insane stories of faith, ambition, and brutality, just like the Siege of Safed. If you think this is as fascinating as we do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. And if you want to support the channel, check out our Patreon, because our patrons are the legends who make these videos happen. Unlike many castles he conquered, Baybars didn't destroy Safed. He knew it was too valuable. He rebuilt it and made it even stronger, taking the Templars' greatest weapon and turning it into his own. He personally watched the repairs, ordered a huge new tower to be built for his victory, and turned the chapel into a mosque. He even had an inscription carved to celebrate the win. Under Mamluk rule, Safed became a provincial capital and a key military base for controlling the entire region. A huge town grew around it, and the fortress that was once the pride of the Templars became a symbol of Mamluk power. The fall of Safed was a brutal lesson written in blood. It proved the military genius and absolute ruthlessness of Sultan Baybars, a man who would use force, tricks, and betrayal to win. For the Knights Templar, the massacre was a dark but legendary moment, adding to their story as warriors who fought to the very end. The broken promise at Safed was a sign that the Crusader dream itself was fading like a flickering candle about to be snuffed out forever.